morning, everyone. Welcome to our 2024 Spring Training Series. I'm Daniel Napolitan, and I'm a marketing specialist here at ESC Spectrum. Today, we have Long Tran, our system support engineer, and he will be discussing the ProcessNow Sequence in StackVision. This year, we're doing things a little different for our webinars. As you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat box. Type into the QA panel or chat box to interact with our speaker, and feel free to discuss any topics throughout the webinar. Keep in mind, everyone can see what is in the chat box. Long will answer any questions to the best of his ability at the end of the webinar. A small reminder, we will be recording this webinar and it will be available immediately after using the same link you used to register. Please allow us a week to upload the recording into our customer community. With that being said, let's begin the training.
All right. Well, hello, y'all. My name is Long Tran. If you've ever sent in a case, you might have dealt with me, and I always sign off my emails with all the best. Probably seen it, but with that, get into it. So a bit more about me. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and I attended UT Austin, and I got my bachelor's in chemistry. And I've been with ESC for about 4 years. It's been 4 years, 3 months. Yeah. Alrighty. So let's get into it. So an overview. So we'll be going over what is ProcessNow, some of the common ProcessNow tasks, and what's happening whenever they fail. Then we'll get into the ProcessNow history report, how to run ProcessNow manually or set it up to run automatically. And we'll get into some of the ProcessNow errors, and we'll have time for questions at the end. You're also welcome to just type in your questions during it. I'll get to them at the end, though. So what is ProcessNow? So this is found in StackVision. Up at the top in your toolbars, you'll see Tools, and then you'll see ProcessNow. And it'll bring up a screen like you see on the right. And from there, you can select your sequences, and those sequences will contain tasks that are sometimes dependent on others, but these tasks are mainly for data processing, substitution, calculations, and calculating certain types of averages like multi-day rolling averages, multi-hour rolling averages, longer time spans than what your logger would calculate. And in it, you can specify end and start times. Cool. So these are some of the common ProcessNow tasks. More often than not, you will use ACCUM, which is the second one there on the left. And that's just to accumulate all Part 75 data that you'll end up reporting. So like your yearly totals, your quarterly totals. You'll have Condition Manager, which will run your condition managers as well as your X scripts. Those are certain, it'll apply like certain data rules that you'll want. So like say certain values above is greater than some limit that you set it at, it can change your data to be flagged as an exceedance or just outright substitute your data. It's a really versatile tool. Aside from that, another commonly used task is hour roll average. That calculates your your hourly rolling averages. So if you have like a 3-hour rolling average or 4-hour or 12. And then you have day roll average, same deal, but with days. And then you have month roll average, same deal, but with months. And then also you have math pack, which is just for calculations. It'll just literally run the equation that you have for that parameter. And then you have UDR, which will calculate the stack daily record for operating time data. We'll get into it, but it's very time online dependent. And then you have PDR, which will calculate all of your Part 75 auxiliary data, as well as percent monitor availability and bias factors. Okay. I'll get to your question at the end, Bryce, but we do have a manual that goes over all of them. whoops. So what happens whenever ProcessNow fails? You'll have, so in the bottom right-hand corner of your StackVision screen, there's this little gear icon. You'll have an X over it to indicate that a ProcessNow has failed. You'll also get an application alarm. And if you open up the ProcessNow history report, it'll show error in the status. And I'll get into what to do after you've realized it has failed. Oh, well, I guess I'll go into how to find the ProcessNow history report. So in StackVision, you'll go up to reports at the top. You'll have this drop-down menu, and then you'll see ProcessNow history. Whenever you open up that report, you'll have to specify a few things. So what you're specifying at the top is when the ProcessNow was run. That's how we've made it so you can find the ProcessNow that failed. So you'll click the start time and end time, and then you'll want to select the sequence that failed, and then you'll hit show report. And if it has failed, it will come up like so in the picture. So we'll have like the name of the sequence, when the sequence was started, and how long it ran for, as well as the start and end dates of the data that was to be processed. Going on. So in the ProcessNow history report, if you click on the plus icon that was to the left of the sequence, I can go back to show you what that looked like before. Just a little slow. Okay, there's this little plus icon. Oh. Okay, so there's that plus icon to the left of the sequence. If you were to click that, it would bring this up. So go through all the tasks that were ran, right? And so on this one, we got up to task 10, which is your UDR, and it'll also show error, but the ProcessNow aborted after task 10. Typically, you'll have more tasks, but just aborted there, so you know something went wrong. Alrighty, and so if you were to click on the error under status, it'll give you a more detailed account of what has happened, and from there, that's how we begin to look at resolving your errors. So on this UDR, it's saying that your unit op hours was missing, and so it didn't process some other parameters such as load and fuel factor. All right, to run ProcessNow manually, you'll go to Tools, which you can find up at the toolbar at the top. Just select ProcessNow, choose your sequence. You can actually choose multiple sequences, so if you have like multiple units. But then you'll select your date, starting date, and end date for the data that you want processed. Typically, you will do it for the current quarter or a previous quarter, just due to how you submit. And typically, you'll want to run it for, like, say, a Part 75 unit ProcessNow. You'll want to run it for like a full day. So you'll choose the last full day you had. So, like, if I were to run it for this quarter, I would have chosen 4/1 to 6/19 to 23:59. And typically you never want to run it over quarters, like crossing quarters. Now, to set it up automatically, we do have our task scheduler wizard. That'll be under the configuration tab at the top in StackVision, but typically you want it to run for at just a little bit after midnight, after a day, and it'll be for processing all data for the quarter, for like for the start of the quarter to like the end of the last day. And you'll also typically have an hourly ProcessNow that just runs after the hour. Oh, and this will walk you through it. So you'll go through configuration, click Task Scheduler Wizard, and then you'll have a wizard pop up, and it's rather straightforward. Yep, go through it. That's what the screen will look like. But all right, So common errors. So if you ever get an error on your UDR, you'll get this error that says stack daily record / UDR record unprocessed or incomplete because of missing out of control or invalid data flag. So you pull up the report as we did, or as I showed you how to do earlier. And then here's another example. And then you'd look at the specific error. And then, so in this instance, they found that unit op hour is missing. So we can go to Data Lab. We can sort for missing and invalid data. And we can see here that unit op hour is in fact missing there. So from there, we do have two possible solutions. We can either manually backpull it. So if the data exists in the logger, but for some reason was not pulled, we can pull it that way. Or if we've seen this happen before where the logger lost power, so like that data just doesn't exist at all, you can fill it in to the best of your ability. Typically, your DCS will have this data or somewhere else where you store data, but you'll just fill it in. And we'll also go over how to manually backpull data. I think one of these is a video. If not, I can go through it. See if I can find it. I don't know if the video wants to load here, but you'll go to controller tools and select the logger that you need and the time frame, and you'll just hit backpull and it'll fill in the data for you. Afterwards, you should run a process now, and it should pass. Yep. Oh, it's not showing. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I will read off that slide. Otherwise, I thought it showed normally. Let's see here. So if you have a PDR error, and it's unable to contain and it cannot obtain the drop date, chances are ProcessNow failed on UDR at the end of the last quarter, and this error was unresolved. So when the new quarter began, PDR started failing. So to resolve this, you would resolve your UDR error from last quarter, and that should resolve your PDR error for the current quarter. And we just went over how to resolve your UDR errors. And this slide was, well, if it had shown properly. Give me 1 second. Fix something. Sorry about that. All right. On this slide here, we would have gone through how to run PDR in command line. However, you don't really need to do this. If you were to just type in svdirect with a dash question mark, it will show you all of the syntax for it. But I've never had to use this. It's just a feature. It is recommended that you do your PDR or do your UDR over the same time frame as your PDR. So if you were to resolve your UDR from last quarter, you'd also need to run your PDR as well. And then when you get into your current quarter, it should pass as well. All righty. That is kind of annoying. So another common error you'll get is with the ACCUM task for accumulate. For these, you'll need to take note of the parameter and the hours in question. So it's not adding something correctly, right? So to resolve this error, you'll open up the parameters in Data Lab and look at those hours that it does notate. And you'll want to correct the data there. All right. Now, if your ProcessNow is ever just stuck in starting, this has happened before, or if it's just continuously running, you'll notice that the gear icon has become these two green arrows, and it'll just stay like that for God knows how long. But you'll open up the ProcessNow history report and take a look, and it'll often say started. And when that happens, you can click on the plus to see what task it's getting hung up on. And you can abort them, abort the ProcessNow sequence, but I rarely recommend doing that. But you can see where it's getting hung up on. Then you can locate the task in Windows Task Manager to kill it that way. Sometimes I just restart. I don't think you're going to lose data unless the data logger loses data, but just me thing. Alrighty, and then the next thing, ProcessNow errors. When your averages aren't calculating, chances are there's some invalid data somewhere, or your ProcessNow has not run over that data. I would look to the report to see if it correctly ran. If ProcessNow correctly ran, then there's some data that you have that is interfering with the calculation, and you'd have to rectify the data first, and then that should solve your ProcessNow calculating error. There are multiple tasks that can lead to your ProcessNow being stuck. One could be SV MP Calc Parm, that is your math pack. Apply FYS. There's SV cum rec, SV hour roll average, SV day roll average, SV month roll average, SV MD sub, SV condition manager, SV min to hour, and SV range exceedance. If you reboot the server or kill StackVision services, it will kill these tasks. Okay, let's see another question. Also, one thing I've noticed, if you have your ProcessNow to run automatically, but you haven't, like let's say your unit hasn't operated that quarter at all, so you have no valid data, ProcessNow will get hung up, and that's totally fine because it'll think that there's data to process, but you have no data to process, so it'll just be stuck, and that's okay. But I mean, you're not processing any data, but you would either need to kill ProcessNow or reboot your server as soon as you start getting data, because it'll just stay stuck. There's a weird instance I've had that happen. And how to contact us. So you can either call our number at 512-250-7901, and it'll take you through a tree. That support should be pretty easy to find. You can also email us at support@escspectrum.com. And we also have a live chat feature. You will need community access for that. And you can also just add in a new case yourself if you have community access. And with that, I think we should be at questions.
All right. We have 2 questions. Anyone else, if you have any additional questions, feel free to add them in the chat box now.
Yeah.
Bryce Smith asked, how do we know what each task consists of or the functionality of each ProcessNow task?
Yes, so the best way I would find that would be to go through the user manual that we have for StackVision. New ProcessNow feature. We can get to that. So to find that, if you were to go to, I think there's help in StackVision itself, and there should be a user manual there, but otherwise we have a user manual on our website that's very helpful. That's where I would go for those, because each task it'll have a detailed write-up on each task. Um, for the next question, did
And
you
then
write them?
Bryce Smith also asked, do we have to have administrative access to run this?
No. So you can run ProcessNow from within StackVision, and it will use the service account on the server to run it. That being said, in order to kill a task like I had talked about, you will likely need administrative access on the server itself, just to be able to end a task. Certain orgs have restrictions on who can just end tasks, let alone open task manager on the server itself. Um, if you wanted to run any of the tasks via command prompt, I suspect you likely will need administrative access. But we didn't cover that today, and I would not recommend that you do it without knowing what you're doing. Yep.
Okay. And then Nicole Ravinius asked, can you please discuss the new Process Now feature?
Um, do you mind elaborating, Nicole, on which new feature it is you're speaking of? If you're talking about advanced process now, where I think you can just run specific tasks, that would be outside the scope of my presentation. But I will give you a second to elaborate. Oh, I got it right. That would be outside the scope of my presentation for today. So sorry about that. Yeah.
All right. Not seeing any more questions at the moment. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email along customer support or the marketing team, and we can pass that along. Just a reminder, the recording for this webinar will be available immediately afterwards on the same link and will be uploaded to the customer community in the following week. This is our final spring training series webinar, so thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to register for our 2024 user group in training in Pensacola, Florida on August 20th through 22nd. Link is at the bottom of the screen right now, so you can register. And I don't see any additional questions, so thank you again, Long, for presenting, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you all. You have a good one.